The Greatest Promise Ever Made. Part 4. What the Messiah is like.
Welcome once again to the video series, The Greatest Promise Ever Made. This is part 4. Now, if you have not viewed part 1 through 3, I leave links below in the description. Please view them first and return. Today I will open from the Psalms at chapter 2, verses 1 through 7 in the King James Version, where there is a bit of prophecy mixed in with the question about the condition of mankind in the times of old, and exactly the prophecy where mankind of this world is today. Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth have set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Now, I interrupt here just for a second to ask you, the listener, take a moment and think. Are we not today exactly where the psalmists say? Look at the Middle East. Look at what's going on with Israel. Look at what's going on with the councils of the great rulers of this world in the EU and the United Nations. Just ask yourself, are we not exactly where the psalmist said so many thousands years ago? But let's continue with the psalm. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, for the Lord has them in derision. Then he shall speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet I have set my king upon my holy hill of Zion, and I will declare this decree. For the Lord hath said unto me, I gotta clear my throat for this. Thou art my son. This day I have begotten thee. There's the prophecy. Son of the living God will come from times of ancient, I believe back to the times of King David, or maybe Solomon. Now, the reason why I'm presenting this in the first place, the greatest promise ever made, is multifold. First, I must say that the presentation is here from the scriptures. And in case you haven't noticed, I try to keep about 80% scripture and 20% or less of my own intermingling. It ain't easy to do sometimes, and sometimes I have to pass by other scriptural truths in order to keep the main focus on the messianic prophecies, or as close to that as I can. Then I also present the fulfillment of those same prophecies as they were accomplished by Jesus as he walked among men as, you could say, part man. And all of this is done so that by this evidence we may know that Jesus is the Messiah. And secondly, that we also may understand that what God has promised, God will accomplish. So let us pick up with the study again now. And again, from the prophet Isaiah 53, 1 through 3. I love Isaiah. He really did a lot of prophecy. There are other places where messianic prophecies are given, but Isaiah puts them as about as plain as you're going to find them. And he reads, now Isaiah chapter 53, verses 1 through 3. Who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, that when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, and acquainted with grief. And we hid as if our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Now then, is there any way that we may see these prophecies fulfilled? And I say yes, for as the witness of Luke tells us in chapter 17, verses 24 and 25, for as lightning that lighteth out of the one part of heaven under heaven, shineth unto the other part under heaven, so shall the Son of Man be in this day. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected of this generation. Those are words of Jesus. And then again in Luke chapter 23, verses 20 through 23, we see that Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spoke again to them. But they cried, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, Why? What evil has this man done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. May I repeat that last part just a little bit? And the voices of them, that would be the people, and of the chief priests prevailed. Now, what did it say? He is despised and rejected of men. And we move on past that a little bit. And we hid as if it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. It's talking about the people. And we could throw in here also a little bit of known history, that even the disciples themselves were so emotionally wrought and probably felt pretty well left down, they simply ran away, all except for John. That's the one exception we know of. We don't know how far they ran, but we know they were not there. But let's move along now. Following is the witness of John, who I just mentioned, St. John, at chapter 5, verses 41 and 43, where Jesus is quoted. I received not honor from men, but I know you. And he was speaking to the crowds. But I know you, and that you have not the love of God in you. For I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. And then again, the witness of John also in chapter 1, verses 10 and 11 states this. Again, this links back to the Isaiah 53. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. And he came unto his own, and his own received him not. Now, if we were to take a look at the prophecy of Micah in chapter 3, we find, this is told that, Jesus was the messenger of the covenant by which they thought they had received through Moses, the law. And all of the covenant that has been kept with Israel ever since, from then, to the end, is being kept through the messenger of the covenant, which is Jesus the Christ. Let's get back to this study then again. I'm wandering a little too much here. And again, we look at the prophet Isaiah as he speaks to us from 2,700 years ago. Yes, 2,700 years ago, roughly. In chapter 11, verses 1 through 5 from the book of Isaiah, it says, "And there shall come forth a root out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." I interrupt here again. Just a mention of Jesse by name here comes over 200 years before Jesse was even born. And just to tie this together so we all recognize this, Jesse was the father of David, who became the second king of Israel. Also, Jesus the Christ was born of the branch of the house of David. And I think, can't prove it right here on the moment, but I think also through Joseph, as we recognize through in the scriptures to be a descendant of David, and also Mary, I believe, was descended through the same trough, same branch, so to speak. Now let's get back to the prophecy. "And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him." Now here we're starting to talk about who the Messiah is. What is he like? "And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, and the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord, and shall make him a quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. And he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins." Now, the psalmist also writes about the Messiah in the 45th chapter, verses 7 and 8, where it reads, "Thou lovest righteousness," he's speaking about the Messiah, "thou lovest righteousness, and hatest wickedness. Therefore God, thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows, and all the garments smell of myrrh, and aloes, and cassia, out of the ivory palaces where they have made thee glad." I want to note here real quickly that myrrh, aloe, and cassia out of ivory palaces might just remind us of the wise men of the Far East that came to visit the young Jesus as a child in Bethlehem. Then Luke witnesses for us also at chapter 4, verses 18 and 19, where Jesus read from the scrolls of the prophet Isaiah 61, verse 1. Again, we're looking at who or what the Messiah will be like. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me," it reads in Isaiah chapter 61, "because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering the sight to the blind, to set liberty them that are bruised, and to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. All anyone needs to do with that being said, you want backup authority for that? Well, Matthew chapter 5. Read through the Beatitudes where Jesus speaks to the people where they are, that they may understand what he is. It's an interesting read if you open up your sights and apply it to yourself. That's one thing where we can really get a life application from. Matthew chapter 5, commonly referred to as the Beatitudes. And this was accomplished by the Lord. Also, as we approach closing time today, we have been looking at what the Messiah is like, as we learn through prophecy and through the accomplishment. I will close now with reading from the words of Jesus himself, which is found at the 11th chapter of Matthew, verses 27 through 30. All things are delivered unto me of my Father, and no man knoweth the Son but the Father, neither knoweth any man the Father save the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavily laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly at heart. And ye shall find rest unto your souls, for my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. With that, I now close by asking, who hath believed our report? To whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? If it is you, then you are blessed indeed. Please continue with me when I dig a little deeper into the Jesus ministry time and who he was in the coming part 5, out next week, I believe. Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Until then, this is B.D. Baker saying to you, hope is to see you at the wedding.